I was standing in the kitchen, watching the coffee swirl in my mug, when I realized something wasn't right. It wasn't a gut feeling. It wasn't paranoia. It was absence. The kind you don't notice until it's too loud to ignore. Ashley wasn't here. The clock on the microwave glowed 2:43 a.m. The house was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that makes you feel like an intruder in your own home. I glanced at the front door, still locked. Her car wasn't in the driveway. My fingers twitched toward my phone on the counter. No messages. No missed calls. Nothing. I didn't panic. Not yet. Instead, I went to the bedroom. The bed was still made on her side. Her pillow untouched. Her nightstand empty except for the lamp and that stupid vanilla-scented candle she never lit. I checked the bathroom, the closet, the laundry room, for God's sake. Nothing. A weird sort of tension settled into my spine. Called her. Voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. I texted. Where are you? Nothing. I wasn't the kind of guy who overreacted. But this wasn't normal. Ashley wasn't the type to stay out this late without a single word. She had her girls' nights. Sure, she had her work events. But she always checked in. Even when she was mad at me, this was different. Something was wrong. My mind started running through the possibilities. Car accident? Stolen phone? Emergency? But if it were an emergency, someone would have called me. Unless she didn't want to be found. That thought sat heavy in my chest as I opened Find My iPhone. Her location popped up instantly. Not at her sister's house. Not at a hospital. Not anywhere that made sense. A motel. 30 minutes away. My fingers tightened around the phone. I stared at the screen, willing it to be some kind of glitch. A mistake. But no, the little blinking dot stayed there. Right over Pinecrest Inn. I had two choices. Ignore it. Pretend I never saw it. Go to bed and ask her in the morning, acting like I wasn't already picturing the worst. Or get in the car. I grabbed my keys. I drove fast. Not reckless, but fast enough that my pulse kept up with the hum of the engine. The highway was mostly empty, the streetlights casting long, sharp shadows over the road. The closer I got to the motel, the heavier the air felt in my chest, like my body already knew what my brain wasn't ready to accept. Ashley was there, at a cheap, dimly lit motel on the outskirts of town, and I was about to find out why. I pulled into the parking lot, shutting off the headlights as I rolled into a space near the entrance. The place was exactly what you'd expect. A squat, two-story building with a flickering neon vacancy sign, the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be found. I didn't get out right away. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my eyes scanning the parked cars, looking for hers, and there it was. 2 rows ahead, tucked in a corner spot, like she thought parking farther away would make her invisible. My stomach twisted as I stared at it. It was hers, no doubt. The little sun-faded sticker on the bumper, the scrape on the side mirror she never got fixed. This wasn't a misunderstanding. I stepped out of my car, shutting the door softly, as if being quiet would somehow change the outcome of this night. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I walked toward the staircase. A couple of men stood outside one of the ground floor rooms, passing a cigarette between them, throwing me a glance before looking away. I didn't care. Ashley's location had pinned her in room 214. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, my legs moving on their own. The air smelled like damp carpet and stale beer, the kind of place that never really gets clean no matter how much they try. I stopped in front of the door, breathed in, knocked. No answer. Knocked again, harder. Nothing. Then movement inside. A shuffle. The creak of bed springs. A hushed voice. I tried the handle. Locked. My breath came shallow and sharp as I knocked again. This time like I wasn't asking. I was demanding. A pause. Then, finally, footsteps. The door cracked open an inch, the security chain still in place. And there she was. Ashley. Her hair was a mess. Her face was flushed. She was wearing a hoodie that wasn't hers. A man's hoodie. The moment she saw me, her expression twisted into something between shock and annoyance, as if I was the one in the wrong for being here. Ethan? She whispered. Like my name was a curse she didn't want to speak out loud. I just stared at her. Then, from inside the room, another voice. A man's voice. Ash. Who is it? And just like that, Everything inside me went cold that Ashley's eyes widened, just for a second, before she turned her head slightly, like she could somehow make me disappear if she ignored me long enough. The chain rattled as she hesitated, blocking my view inside. But I didn't need to see. I already knew. The voice inside the room, it wasn't a stranger's. It was Mike's. My friend. My coworker. The guy who sat across from me at work every day, sharing coffee, cracking jokes about our dumb boss, asking about Ashley like he actually gave a damn. Something inside me snapped into place, a sickening kind of clarity washing over me. Ashley? I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Take the chain off. She hesitated. Her hand twitched toward the lock, then stopped. She knew. She knew there was no lie, no excuse, no carefully worded half-truth that would get her out of this. Ash. Mike's voice again, this time more cautious. Footsteps approached. Who's at the... The door moved slightly as he tried to peek over her shoulder, and that's when I really lost it. I slammed my palm against the door, making it jolt in its frame. Ashley flinched. Take the chain off. Now. She looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable, like I was the problem here. Ethan, please, she whispered. Not here. Not here. Not here. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. My whole body felt like it was running on some kind of autopilot I didn't recognize. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. Too calm. You don't get to control this, I said. Not anymore. Take the chain off, Ashley, or I swear to God, I will make so much noise the whole damn motel will know what's happening in this room. A beat of silence. Then, slowly, she slid the chain off. The door opened, and there he was. Mike stood a few feet behind her, barefoot, wearing nothing but sweats and a t-shirt, my t-shirt. My mind registered the details instantly, the way his hair was damp, like he'd just taken a shower. The way Ashley's hoodie was pulled on haphazardly, like she had thrown it over herself at the last second. I stepped inside. Ashley moved, as if to stop me, but I brushed past her. The room was exactly what I expected. A mess of tangled sheets, discarded clothes, and the kind of air that reeked of betrayal. Mike didn't speak at first, just stood there, like he was waiting for me to make the first move. So I did. I turned to Ashley, my voice razor-sharp. How long? She swallowed. Ethan. How long? Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Mike, like he might have the answer before turning back to me. A few months. Months. Not a mistake. Not a drunken lapse in judgment. A decision. Repeated. Over. And over. And all this time she had come home. Slept in our bed. Kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Looked me in the eye. My jaw tightened. I turned to Mike, my words cutting through the air like a blade. You knew. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. He started, then stopped, exhaling through his nose. Yeah, I did. That was it. No apology. No regret. Ashley stepped closer, reaching out like she actually thought she could fix this with a touch. Ethan, please. We need to talk. I took a step back, avoiding her entirely. Talk, I repeated, laughing bitterly. You had months to talk. You had months to come to me to be honest. But you didn't. You lied. Every day. You chose this. Tears welled in her eyes, but I had no sympathy left. I turned to Mike one last time. I hope it was worth it, I said, because you just lost your job. His face drained of color. And without another word, I turned and walked out the door. I didn't go home. Couldn't. The thought of stepping back into our house, no, my house, made my stomach churn. Every inch of it was tainted now. The couch where she curled up on Sundays, pretending she loved watching my favorite shows. The kitchen where she used to steal bites of my food, laughing when I glared at her. The bed, God, the bed. No, I wasn't going back. Not yet. So I drove. Nowhere in particular, just away. The road stretched ahead, empty, dark. A blur of headlights and street signs I barely registered. My phone buzzed next to me. Once, twice, then again. Ashley. I ignored it. The anger had settled into something colder now, more controlled. The initial explosion of betrayal had passed, and in its place was something sharper, something dangerous. I pulled into a 24-hour diner, the kind that smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. A few truckers sat in the back, hunched over plates of greasy food, their conversations a low murmur under the hum of the flickering neon sign. I slid into a booth, staring at the scratched-up menu without reading it. A waitress, mid-50s, tired eyes, came over, not bothering with the usual pleasantries. "What'll it be?" "Just coffee," I muttered. She nodded, walking off. I exhaled, running a hand down my face. My mind replayed the night over and over like a film on a loop. Ashley's face when she saw me, Mike's complete lack of shame, the way she had hesitated before answering me, like she actually had to think about how long she'd been lying. A few months. That meant this wasn't just some fling. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. A choice every single day to betray me. And Mike, the guy who sat across from me at work, who joked about weekend plans and asked about my marriage like he actually gave a damn. Not anymore. The waitress dropped off my coffee, and I barely acknowledged her. My phone buzzed again. I forced myself to look this time. Ashley, 6 missed calls. Ashley, Ethan, please talk to me. Ashley, I know you're angry, but we need to talk. Ashley, please don't do anything rash. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Don't do anything rash? That was rich, coming from her. I tossed my phone onto the table, staring at it like it might burst into flames. Then, another message. Not from Ashley. "Mike, I'm sorry, man. We need to talk." I stared at the screen, a slow burn igniting in my chest. He had the audacity, the absolute gall to text me like this? I took a sip of my coffee, let the bitterness sit on my tongue. Then, with perfect clarity, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't respond to Mike. He wasn't worth my words. Instead, I sat in that diner, staring at my coffee until it went cold, until my fingers stopped itching to wrap around my phone and fire off the kind of message that would scorch the earth. No, I needed to be smarter than that, because this wasn't just about Ashley cheating. It was about who she cheated with. Mike, the guy I saw 5 days a week. The guy who sat across from me in meetings, who asked about my weekend plans, who cracked jokes about office drama like we were friends. But the best part, the absolute best part, Mike wasn't just some random coworker. He was my subordinate. I was his boss. And that meant I had power. Not petty revenge. Not some half-baked plan to make his life difficult. No real, calculated, career-ending power. So I paid for my untouched coffee, walked out into the night and made a plan. Monday morning, I arrived at work earlier than usual. The office was quiet, the fluorescent lights casting their dull glow over empty desks. I walked straight to HR, knocking once before stepping inside. Jenna, the HR manager, looked up from her computer. "Ethan, everything okay?" I closed the door behind me. "I need to talk to you about Mike." Her brows furrowed. "What about him?" I exhaled, letting just the right amount of tension show on my face. "It's serious, and it involves a potential workplace violation." Her expression shifted instantly. HR reps lived for this kind of thing, the chance to enforce policies, to investigate. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "I have reason to believe Mike has been engaging in inappropriate conduct with a colleague's wife. A direct conflict of interest. And considering our company's stance on ethical workplace relationships." I let the words hang. Jenna's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's a serious accusation." I nodded. "And I have proof." I pulled out my phone, opened Ashley's texts, and scrolled to the ones where she had, stupidly, mentioned Mike by name. Jenna read them, her face unreadable. "This is bad. Very." She looked at me. "Does his wife work here?" "No. But the betrayal happened under the guise of workplace interactions. Business trips. Late-night meetings. He used company time to pursue this. A stretch? Maybe." But Jenna was already nodding, fingers flying across her keyboard. "We'll open an internal review. Mike will be notified by end of day." I leaned back. Good. Step 1. Set the fire. Now, I just had to watch it burn. Mike had no idea what was coming. I sat at my desk, acting like it was just another Monday, watching him stroll in 20 minutes late, coffee in hand, like he didn't have a single worry in the world, like he hadn't just detonated my entire life a few nights ago. He didn't even look at me as he dropped into his chair across from mine. Coward. But I wasn't going to be the one to start this conversation. No, that wasn't how this worked. I wanted him to sit there, clueless, while the noose tightened around his neck. I went about my morning as usual, answering emails, making my rounds through the office. But I could feel it, something brewing just beneath the surface. HR had been quiet so far, but I knew that wouldn't last. And sure enough, just after noon, it happened. Mike's phone buzzed on his desk. He picked it up, read the message, and his entire face changed. His casual, smug expression flickered into something else, something closer to panic. He glanced at me. "Did you?" I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "Something wrong, Mike?" He hesitated. "HR just called me in." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Weird. Wonder what that's about." He stared at me for a beat too long, and I saw it the moment realization started to creep in. The first hints of doubt. The understanding that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't going to get away with this as cleanly as he thought. I watched as he stood, running a hand through his hair, before trudging toward the HR office. And I smiled, because this was just the beginning. I gave it 10 minutes before I followed. Not inside, of course. No, I wasn't going to give Jenna a reason to think I was interfering. I just wanted to be close enough to watch the fallout. When Mike finally emerged, his face was pale, his lips pressed into a thin line. He looked rattled. "Good." He walked straight past me, toward his desk, but I stopped him with a casual, almost friendly, "Everything all right?" He froze. Then, slowly, he turned to me. "You told them." I leaned back in my chair. "Told them what?" His hands curled into fists. "Don't play dumb, Ethan. I know you went to HR." I shrugged. "Sounds like you have something to confess, Mike." His jaw clenched. "You really think this is going to ruin me? They're not going to fire me over this." I didn't react. I just let the silence stretch between us. Because Mike had no idea. He had no clue about the other thing I had done. The email I had scheduled to send out in exactly 5 minutes. To his wife. I didn't have to wait long. 5 minutes later, across the office, Mike's phone rang. He grabbed it without thinking, pressing it to his ear as he muttered, "Hey, babe," and then silence. His posture stiffened. His hand tightened around the phone. His face, already pale from HR, drained of whatever color was left. "Wait. Hold on, I can explain." His voice dropped, desperate now. "It's not what you think." But I knew exactly what she thought, because I had told her. I had laid it all out in the email. Every detail. The late-night texts. The motel. The way Ashley had hesitated before telling me the truth. I even attached screenshots. Mike turned his chair slightly, like he could shield himself from the entire world as he whispered frantically into his phone. I didn't need to hear the other side of the conversation to know what was happening. His wife wasn't buying it. Good. I let him sweat, let him panic, let him realize that everything he had, his marriage, his job, his carefully constructed little double life, was slipping through his fingers. And then I twisted the knife. I stood up casually, stretched, and walked right past his desk, pausing just long enough to murmur, "Told you it wasn't worth it." He turned sharply, eyes full of something close to hatred. But he didn't say a word. He couldn't, because for the first time Mike was losing, and I was just getting started. Mike didn't come back after lunch. I knew because I was watching. His desk sat empty, his computer screen dark, his chair slightly askew from when he'd stormed off after that call. He was unraveling. I imagined the scene playing out. Him driving home, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, trying to figure out how to explain this to his wife. Trying to guess how much she knew, how much more I had sent. And the best part? He'd never be able to lie his way out of it. Not with those screenshots. Not with Ashley's name right there in black and white. The office buzzed around me, oblivious to the storm I had set in motion. Jenna from HR sent me an email later in the afternoon. Subject: Employee Review, Mike Carson. Ethan, we have begun reviewing the complaint regarding workplace conduct. Given the sensitive nature of the issue, Mike has been placed on temporary leave effective immediately. We'll follow up soon. I smirked. Temporary leave. They were being careful, of course. Companies always were. But I knew what this meant. The second they found any excuse to cut him loose, he was done. And as far as I was concerned, I had just given them every excuse they needed. By the time I left work, the sun was setting, staining the sky a deep orange. I felt lighter than I had in days. The rage was still there, simmering beneath my skin, but now it had a purpose, a direction. And then, as I got into my car, my phone buzzed again. Not Ashley, not Mike, someone worse. Ashley's sister, Megan. I frowned, staring at the name for a second before answering. Hello. She didn't waste time. Ethan, what the hell is going on? I pinched the bridge of my nose. Megan, I really don't. Ashley's losing it. She cut in. She showed up at my place crying, saying you're trying to destroy her life. I let out a sharp laugh. I'm trying to destroy her life? That's what she says. She told me you got Mike suspended, that you sent everything to his wife. And now she's panicking because she thinks you're not done. I leaned back in my seat, staring up at the sky. She's right. I'm not. Megan sighed. Ethan, listen. I'm not defending what she did. It was awful. She was selfish and reckless. But she's still my sister and she's a mess right now. Just please, whatever you're planning, just stop. I almost felt bad for Megan. She was the only decent one in Ashley's family. But I wasn't about to back down. Not now. I exhaled slowly. Megan, she made her choice. Now she has to live with it. Silence on the other end. Then, finally, a quiet. She said she's coming to see you. I sat up a little straighter. What? She left her affair behind. But months later, she came looking for you. A slow, cold feeling crept down my spine. Ashley was coming. And I had no idea what she wanted. I didn't go home right away. I needed time to think, to prepare. Ashley coming to see me wasn't something I expected. Not now, not after everything. She should have been hiding, avoiding me, drowning in the consequences of her own actions. But instead, she was coming to me. Why? To beg? To scream? To try and twist the narrative into something where she was the victim and I was the villain? I wasn't going to let her control this conversation. So instead of driving straight home, I stopped at a gas station, grabbed a bottle of water, leaned against my car, and just waited. Let the night air cool me down. Let the anger settle into something cold, sharp, and immovable. When I finally pulled into my driveway, her car was already there. Of course it was. She was sitting on the hood, arms crossed, foot tapping impatiently against the bumper. The streetlight cast a dull glow over her, making her look almost unfamiliar, like a stranger wearing my wife's face. I stepped out of the car, locked the door behind me. Ashley. Her head snapped up, eyes wild, almost manic. Ethan, what the hell are you doing? I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. Not in the mood for games, Ash. She slid off the hood, marching toward me. You got Mike suspended? You sent everything to his wife. Her voice was rising now, shaking. You've ruined everything. I laughed. Actually laughed. I ruined everything? Yes, she shrieked, hands clenching into fists. This wasn't supposed to go like this. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. And how exactly was it supposed to go, Ashley? She faltered, mouth opening and closing like she was struggling to find the right words. It was complicated. I scoffed. It wasn't complicated. You cheated. You lied. You used my house as a place to come back to when you were done screwing around. She flinched at that. I didn't mean to. Don't say it. I cut her off sharply. Don't you dare say you didn't mean to. Her lip trembled. But then, just like that, the sadness disappeared, replaced by something else. Something ugly. You think you're so righteous, she sneered. Like you've never made a mistake. Like you're perfect. I narrowed my eyes. Did I cheat on you? She hesitated. No, but... Then shut the hell up. Her jaw snapped shut, eyes flashing with fury. You're punishing me. I tilted my head. No, Ashley. I'm letting you face the consequences of your own actions. She let out a frustrated breath, shaking her head. This was between us. You didn't have to drag Mike's wife into it. Or his job. I let out a bitter chuckle. Funny how you only care now that it's affecting you. She clenched her teeth. Then suddenly, her expression shifted again. The anger drained from her face, replaced by something softer. Calculating. She stepped closer. I didn't move. Her voice dropped into something almost pleading. Ethan, we had 6 years together. I said nothing. We can't just throw that away, she whispered. She swallowed, reaching out to touch my arm. I still love you. I stared at her. Then slowly, deliberately, I took a step back. Her hand hovered in the air before dropping to her side. No, I said, voice steady. You don't. Her breath hitched. Ethan, you loved what I gave you, I continued. The security, the stability, the life we built. But you didn't love me. Because if you did, you wouldn't have done this. Tears welled in her eyes. But I didn't care. Not anymore. She had already lost me. She just hadn't realized it yet. Ashley stared at me, her tears catching the light, her breath coming in uneven gasps. Maybe she thought crying would fix this. Maybe she thought if she looked sad enough, broken enough, I'd soften. She had no idea that there was nothing left to break. I was done. She took a shaky step forward. Ethan, please. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was lost. But I see it now. I see us. What we had, what we still have. I almost laughed. Still have. I echoed. Ashley, there's nothing left. You set it on fire and watched it burn. She winced. It wasn't like that. I was confused. I made a mistake. Stop calling it a mistake, I snapped. A mistake is forgetting to turn off the oven. A mistake is getting the wrong date for an appointment. You had an affair for months. You planned it. You lied about it. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Her lips trembled, but I could see it. She wasn't sad because she regretted what she did. She was sad because she got caught. Because I wasn't playing the heartbroken husband anymore. Because I wasn't giving her a way out. I stepped past her, heading for my front door. I was done with this conversation. Done with her. But she wasn't finished. I'll fight you, she said suddenly, voice sharper now, desperate. For the house. For everything. I turned back, eyes cold. Go ahead, she faltered. What? Fight me? I said, crossing my arms. Take me to court. Drag this out. Make it messy. Waste your time, your money, your energy. Because I promise you, Ashley, you will lose. Her hands curled into fists. You don't get to just walk away from this like you're the victim. But I am the victim, I said simply. You just don't want to admit it. Silence. For the first time, she had no comeback. No excuse. No manipulation left to spin. I stepped inside and turned back one last time. You left your affair behind, I said quietly. But months later, you came looking for me. I shook my head. You shouldn't have. Then I shut the door in her face. And locked it. She stood there for a while. I could hear her breathing on the other side. Her frustration. Her indecision. Maybe she thought I'd open the door again. Maybe she thought I'd change my mind. I didn't. Minutes later, I heard her car door slam. The engine roared to life. And just like that, she was gone. For good. Epilogue. The divorce was swift. Ashley tried to fight, but the evidence was stacked against her. She walked away with nothing but regret. Mike, he was fired. The official reason was violating workplace conduct policies. But everyone knew the truth. His wife left him, took the house, took the dog, and last I heard, he was living in a tiny apartment, drowning in alimony payments. As for me, I moved on. Really moved on. I sold the house, started fresh somewhere new. Somewhere Ashley had no history, no presence, no place in my world. And for the first time in years, I felt free.